The 8 consciousnesses, today we'll continue with it, and it's very important that we study our own consciousness. And last time I talked about sentient beings. Basically, when you are studying Buddhism, or when you try to understand the world and individual sentient beings' relationship with the world, you need to understand how we think. And it is our thought that originates all the speech and action. And speech and actions would produce karma, karmic energy. And speech and actions and thought also have they could be wholesome, they could be unwholesome, they could be neutral. So they have 3 natures. Every thought, every action, every speech have 3 natures: wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral. And for that reason, karma also has this results as a result of producing bad karma, good karma, and neutral karma. So it's very important that we have to study how we think. We have to know what kind of actions we perform, what kind of speech. Because when you have done something, you sow what you reap. The reason why we suffer is because we have this karmic energy that we produce. And we have to start producing good karma, good energy. That's the first step. But sometimes we don't even know that we produce bad karma. We just do as the ordinary sentient beings do. For example, in our thought, we could have elements of greediness, jealousy, hatred, and accordingly we perform karmic actions that we don't know about. We only feel unhappy when we suffer. We don't know that that kind of suffering is produced by our own efforts. So the Buddha said you have to watch every action, every speech, and every thought that you are producing. And all these is in our consciousness. So that if you refine, if you purify your consciousness, you're on your way to enlightenment. You're on your way to have a happier life in this present life. And you're on your way to get enlightenment where you are free from samsara. So it's very important that we study our own thinking, how we think. So that if you can control your thought, that means you are on your way to enlightenment. But how many people can actually control their own thoughts? They don't even know how they think, how we think. So let's get into how we think. So who am I? What am I made up of? You have to know who am I, what do I make up of, and how I think. For that reason, we have to analyze every self. We call it our self. How does the self work? How does the self think? We have to analyze it with regard to the materiality of it and the spirituality of it, the material side and the spiritual side. To people who attach to the mystics of religion, they always think that religion is about blessings, about something that is inconceivable. But they don't realize that religion is quite down to earth, almost like a science that you really have to study how your brain, your mind investigate, how your mind analyze. If you know your own mind, there was a saying by a enlightened Zen monk, and he said, if you know your own mind, there isn't 1 inch of earth that you don't know. So you have to know your own mind. So let's start doing it in detail now. Who am I? We have to start knowing every bit, we have to investigate, we have to analyze every bit of us. We are made up of the body and the mind. The body is about matter, material. The mind is not, of course the brain is material, but the mind itself it's not material, it's spiritual. Every thought, you can't grasp onto thought. You can touch thought. If we further break down the body, we say we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 very important elements or aggregates or categories. And why do we segregate when we discussed about the body? Why do we just group the body as one and segregate it into eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and then the body? In the Buddhist teaching, it's very scientific. The Buddha wanted us to know how we interact with the world first. So when we interact with the world, we use eyes, ears, nose, and tongue, and the body. Now, the eyes see, the ears listen, the nose smell, the tongue taste, and the body touch. Not just touching, the body touch internally too. So the body relates to our internal organs, how our internal organs work. The circulation. The body, it's matter, is material. Inside, our body consists of the hair, bodily hair, the nails, teeth, skin, flesh, veins, bone structure, liquid in the bone, kidneys, heart, liver, bladder, spleen, lungs, small intestine, large intestine, stomach, feces, brain, gallbladder, gall, phlegm, etc., etc., blood, sweat, blubber, tears, synovia, spit, mucus, marrow, and urine. That's what we make up of inside. And then, of course, we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and all that is related to the brain. In this here, the brain, it only concerns matter. But mind concerns not just the matter, it's the invisible, the inconceivable thought. In the Buddhist teaching, the Buddha called it the 36 internal matter, or the internal organs. Now, how about the mind? How does the mind, what are the aggregates of the mind? The mind, perception, conception, volition, and consciousness. So, in the Buddhist teaching, we always mention the 5 aggregates. 4 of the 5 aggregates related to how we think, the mind: perception, conception, volition, and consciousness. And the rest, all of these, is matter. The body. So the body is matter, molecules, elements, and all that is matter. So when a person dies, all this matter would disintegrate into nothing. A lot of modern philosophers, when they research into how people think, and when they research into how come a human being would produce sensuous desire, this sensuous desire is, they look for what is in their mind as the desire for beauty, the desires for body, the desires for sex, for example. Why do they desire that? Actually, in the sexual desire, what do they desire? They desire a body that contains nothing but matter. They desire hair, bodily hair, nails. We're nothing but a sack of internal organs. We're like a test tube in which you put in all the food through the opening at one end, and on the other end, you just excrete out all the garbage after digestion. That's the body. But sensuously, we yearn for that kind of fulfillment of desire. And the Buddha said, that's the basis of samsara, the basis of suffering. But we're in the sensuous world that we don't know. We think that that's what we need. And inherently, in your thinking, you always think that a man will want a woman will want a man. And that's how they produce a population. That's how the population continue, and that's how suffering continues. When there's no proliferation, there's no more bodies. When there's no more body, there's no more suffering. But I always get the question of, if there's no sensuous performance, relationships, then there will be no population. They always worry about no population. There will be no species on earth. They always worry about that. Let's get into how people think. How people think in the wrong way according to the Buddhist teaching. That's not what I said. How can you say that we all think in the wrong way? Looking for sensuous pleasure has always been the true nature. Some people say it's the true requirement, true nature, true thinking of sentient beings. But the Buddha said, no, it's topsy-turvy. You're thinking in the wrong way. But we don't acknowledge that. We don't actually receive that. That's why we need to study us. How come we think it? How come we think erroneously? That's material, and that is spirituality. Materialistic perspective of life that emphasizes on empirical evidence provided by the five senses, what can literally be seen, heard, taste, touch, smell. And all this, what you have seen, what you have heard, what you have tasted, what you have touched, what you have smelled, in collaboration with your mental thinking, is illusionary. They are delusions. They're cheating us. All these senses are cheating us. Us being yourself, we are cheating ourselves in our delusion. But yet we don't know about it. We don't think that way. We always think that getting more money, getting more wealth, getting reputation, getting a beautiful wife, a handsome, rich husband, raising children, they are what's necessary. That's what we think. But the Buddha said this is an illusion, a delusion. This is not real. You think that it's real, but our thinking is not real. Our thinking is not real, but we think it is real. We think that it's substantial. Many philosophers think of this individual as the most important. René Descartes, a very influential French philosopher, he uttered something that is quite close to what we're talking about today. And maybe let's examine it a little bit further in here. And what Descartes says, it belonged to the 15th, 16th century. I think, therefore I am, and it means I cognize, I think. Cognize means think. I cognize, therefore I exist in samsara. This condition is based on attachment to greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed, hatred, and delusion are just the three very basic. Of course, there are the subsidiary mental afflictions that we'll be all talking about in studying consciousness. But basically, the obvious attachment is attachment to greed, hatred, and delusion. This greed includes the sensuous pleasures that we're looking for. Greediness for sensual pleasure. Greed, hatred, and delusions. And this attachment originates from ignorance of the true nature of the mind, because we don't know the true nature of our mind. So we need to study the true nature of our mind. And to some people, this seems very profound. They thought that the Buddha only talked about how to get blessings from the Buddha. That's not the most important. That's not the objective of studying Buddhism. The objective of studying Buddhism is to understand the universe, understand yourself, your relationship with the universe. Not about getting blessings, not about getting a meditation to get good health. Once you get good health, you live for 100 years, you still die, right? You cannot solve the problem. You still have family problems, society problems, you still have this greediness, hatred, jealousy, delusions, you still have these problems. So the most important is to study the mind and know how to get to wisdom. So in order to know more about the mind, we say, okay, how do we think? We said we have 8 consciousnesses. How do these 8 consciousnesses work in detail? How does the ear consciousness work? The eye, the nose, and all that work? If you know those in detail, then you know that you're not yearning for greediness anymore. You're not attached to hatred anymore. Not attached to delusions anymore. You're looking for wisdom. And this wisdom will guide you to practice until you are out from reincarnation, out from suffering. That's the objective of studying the Yogacara approach of the Buddhist teaching. It's aimed at purifying your senses. If you pursue the wisdom of the Buddha's teaching, if you're always not studying how are you related to the world and related to others, how your mind works, you can never get to it. If you have the wrong objective. So let's get more into it. I think, therefore I am. We say we are a combination of the body and the mind. Material, perception, conception, volition, and consciousness will be touching on in these 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates, or the 5 combinations in detail. As I said, this body will include 36 matters plus eyes, ears, nose, tongue. When we study body, why do we get into the details? Because as a monk, we always study the impurity contemplation. So when we have the sensuous pleasures still hidden in our consciousness, we have to do contemplation to get rid of it. So we really have to know how the body is structured, the impurity of the internal organs, and then we won't attach to sensuous pleasures anymore. So the 5 skandhas: material, perception, conception, volition, and consciousness. And the material part of it, the senses, the eyes interact with the environs, interact with objects. And when the eyes interact with objects, it produces the vision consciousness. So if there's no object, there's no vision consciousness. Only when the senses interact with the objects, the eyes can see and the object is being seen. So there must be the one that originates and the ones that receive, the ones that's perceived. So the eyes perceive the objects, and thereby eyes consciousness is being produced. The vision consciousness is being produced. The ears interact with sound, and then the audition or the ears consciousness is produced. If your ears listen to some sound, if your attention is not there, there's no ears consciousness, because you're insensitive to it. So we really have to pay attention in order to get this auditions or ears consciousness. The nose interact with smell, the nose consciousness, olfaction consciousness. Tongue interact with taste, then you have the taste consciousness. The body interact with touch, the tactility, tactile consciousness. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 forerunner consciousness. Those are the obvious consciousness that we have. The Yogacara approach of Buddhism, to my experience when I talk about Yogacara, is not many people are interested in it. And as a matter of fact, some people will be bored by it because it's like taking a course in university, studying a psychology. Only people, and that's of course my personal experience, only those people who look for wisdom, who are intelligentsia, who wants to know more, only those people are interested in Buddhism. Otherwise, they will stop at this approach because it's too profound for people. This is just the beginning. When you get more and more into it, there is a lot of terminology and terms. There's a lot more when you get deeper and deeper into this Yogacara approach. Sometimes some people get lost in it. It's like an ocean of knowledge. But if you can keep your patience on, you get more and more wisdom from it. And if you really want to study it, you know why? When you are talking to some people and you know that the Buddhist teaching is good and you want to convince them, you have no wisdom and ability to convince him because you haven't got the knowledge in it. They raise questions that you cannot answer. If you are real Yogacara believers, a real student in studying it, there is no question that you cannot answer. So in other words, if you really want to be eloquent in talking about Buddhism, you really have to study this school of Buddhism. They also contain a section on how do you give a speech, a huge volume of how to present yourself, how to use logic to get into the argument. It's all logic in there. What does the mind interact with? The eyes consciousness, ears, nose, tongue, body consciousness. So it interacts with everything. But then it can also be broken down into 3 consciousnesses by itself. The mano consciousness, the manas, and the alaya. The mano consciousness is the most active. And sometimes people say that's actually the function of the brain. The brain, the mano consciousness, is like, if I can give an example, is like a manager that manages all these salesmen and sales lady. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, they are salesmen or sales lady in the front end. And this mano is the manager that manages all these. And also this mano interact with manas and alaya. There's no permanence per se, no permanence. But for the purpose of discussion, these is more permanent than all these 6. Because when a person dies, nothing of these remain. Your eyes, no more. Nose, no more. Tongue, body, no internal organs, disintegrations, nothing left. The manas, the brain, also nothing left. And this manas, which is your ego, would shrink into the alaya consciousness. And the alaya consciousness is invisible. It's like an energy. It's like a whole conglomeration of energy. That's the inner part of it, alaya consciousness, the storage, the bank that stores up all this information, stores up all this energy, bad energy, good energy, wholesome, unwholesome, neutral, and it get all stored into the alaya consciousness, the storage and interaction house for all. When a person is still living, when an individual is still living, the manas is working permanently, interacting in collaboration with mano. If we can give an example, the mano is the company's manager, and the manas is the company's sole director. He's the director. He doesn't need to interact with the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue. But the director is only interested, he's the sole shareholder, is only interested in making money. You know, the motivation is to make money, to make the profit for himself. So this is the ego. You're only interested in it in enriching your own ego. You seek ego protection. You want to aggrandize your ego. You want an explosion of your ego. You always protect your ego, the I. All the greediness, hatred, love, opinions, jealousy, you name it, all originates from, it interacts with the ego. You have the ego, I have the ego. That's the problem. We have the ego. You can't get rid of that ego. You brought that ego forward from millions of years ago with the reincarnation process. And if you know that, some people say, if we know this, how does it help me? If you know that, then you know that your ego has been pulling you down. Your ego has been hurting you. Your ego has been hurting others. Your ego is responsible for international war, family problems, violence, sex. Everything is the ego that interact with. But some people still attach to the ego. I want to do this. This is mine. This is yours. You're always pursuing the egoistic interests. And that's the problem. At the expense of others, in hurting others too. When you are bullying other people, you want to hurt the egos of others and inflating your own ego because you are in control. So that's the manas consciousness. And when a person dies, everything of this is gone and shrink into the alaya consciousness. And that alaya consciousness reincarnates when the body is gone. So the body, sensuously, of what you're looking for, actually is a whole bunch of matter that after death, no more left. And it all shrinks into the alaya consciousness. And with this alaya consciousness, it contains the wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral karmic energy. We are in this world, we call it the karma world, the world of desires. We come with desires, with greediness, hatred, and ignorance. So we have more bad, unwholesome energy than good energy. Is it pessimistic? No, we've been creating our own energy. That's the reason why we have to be very careful. How come how come individuals and sentient beings are all different? Some are rich, some are poor, some are healthy, some are unhealthy, short, tall, some look handsome, some look ugly in beauty. Everyone is different because everyone's a liar. The storage is different. Everyone's bank account is different. No one is the same. So you don't blame your dad for giving you that bad look. You don't blame your family for not bequeathing yourself with a lot of estates and money. And how come John, has all this money from his father and I'm poor? You have this karmic energy in you that induce you, that carry you to be born in that poor family. You have the karmic energy to be born in Canada. And some people have the karmic energy of being born into an underdeveloped poor country where they don't even have clothes to wear. They were in the woods. They're living in squatter huts. They're living in a hut that is made up of Coca-Cola tins and cans. And they're making $1 per hour. You're making $10 an hour, $12, $20 an hour, but they're making $1 per hour. They were being carried by their own energy into there. The alaya consciousness reincarnate into that mom's body and become a child. This is not the inequality of God. You created that quality. Don't you have to be very careful with producing karma? The Buddha said, be careful with every thought, not just the action and speech. Every thought produces karmic energy. And how is the karmic energy produced? Through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. They are produced. Don't you have to be very careful with all this consciousness that you possess, you have? Why do you have mental afflictions? Because our consciousness is attached to external objects. We're attached. We don't let go. We're attached to wealth, fame, reputation. We're attached to authority and power. That's what our consciousness habitually attached to. You don't know about it. We don't know about it. The Buddhas have changed that, purified that. You're on your way to enlightenment. Attachment is habitual thinking that occupies the mind. During the attachment, concurrent mental functions arise simultaneously to disrupt our inner peace. Why do we get jealous? Why is our internal peace disrupted? Why should we be in meditation? When you are in meditation, you are more mindful of your mental afflictions. You don't allow yourself to be affected by externalities. You want to have that inner peace. You want to train yourself to have that inner peace. It's just a training process. And a whole series of this training, you're habitually training yourself to have this inner peace by purifying all your senses. You're on your way to nirvana. Our inner peace is disrupted. We think that pursuing external pleasure is arriving at happiness. We don't know that this internal peace is the actual real happiness. You think more money will help you to be happy. More sensual pleasures, satisfaction will help you to be happy. But that's just the opposite way. This internal peace, that's why you want to have this glimpse of internal peace through meditation. That's why we meditate. Due to habitual attachment, our mind becomes set on predetermined thoughts. These thoughts can create uncontrollable reactions: anger, jealousy, sadness, inferior complex, sensual indulgences, depressions that perpetuate our problems and sufferings. That's where the suffering comes from. Our mental afflictions. How many of these mental afflictions do we have? The Yogacara would analyze these mental afflictions in detail. There are 100 mental functions, generally. And there's 51 mental afflictions. And we have to analyze each one of these. We have to analyze this 100 dharmas, we call it. The 100 dharmas, the 100 mental functions. The reason why we're studying is we want to know our enemies. We have to treat this mental, if I can use that word enemy. A Buddhist has no enemies. But just to give you an example, we have to treat this unwholesome mental functions as our enemies. We don't let them affect our inner peace. We don't want jealousy to affect our inner peace. We don't want depression to affect our inner peace. So you have to treat these mental afflictions as enemies when you're doing the meditation. So that's the reason why many Zen monks said that meditation is a fight. You're fighting against mental afflictions. You're like a boxing. You want to weed out all these mental afflictions that are going to go in your way. They're boxing you. In every they actually find out they're killing you. They're attacking you. In meditation, you learn how to avoid these mental afflictions. You have to defend yourself, not letting them to come in. It's guarding your city. It's guarding your inner peace city, not allowing all these to enter into your mentality. How many people would pursue, would know that fight, would know that they're fighting against it? They're actually inviting all the enemies to affect the inner peace. They're inviting jealousy, hatred, greediness, you name them. They cannot get away from those. So the Buddhist teaching says that if you know consciousness, Yogacara, you're on your first step to nirvana, because you know that that's what you want to learn about, that's what you want to train yourself about, and get away from them. You want to get away from greediness, hatred, and jealousy, and delusions. There's one more concept that is very important in the Buddhist teaching, and that is causality. What would lead to, if you want a quote-unquote happiness, everybody is looking for happiness. What kind of happiness? What's the definition of happiness? How do you get that happiness? You have to know the causality of every dharma, every action, every speech, every thought. There's causality. There's a cause, lead to an effect. We only feel grief-stricken when we suffer from the effect. We don't know we have already sowed that cause for being unhappy. You sow what you reap. What do you sow? Your words, your concept that is in your mind will lead to thinking, thoughts. You cannot think without concept. You cannot think without words. You need words to think. You cannot think about fire if you don't know what is fire. Fire would heat, would burn you, would hurt you, but you have to have thoughts, concept. That's the reason why babies have to be taught, oh, this is a flower, this is food, this is milk. They have to be taught that word so that they can think. So when they're hungry, they thought of milk, then they know that they got to drink milk. So thought starts from concepts or words. And then, of course, words have wholesome words, unwholesome words, and neutral words. Getting angry, for example, is unwholesome. Being compassionate, kind, is wholesome. The concept of helping others, the concept of hurting others, those concepts are different in different people's mind. So it is very important that you train your baby with the right words, the right concept. You have to train all these youngsters with the right morality, the right concept. So that's the reason why education is very important at very basic level, elementary level. Not just training them how to read, training them how to think. Words will lead to thoughts. Thought would take you to action and speech. Every action comes from thought. The action of hitting you comes from a thought. I want to hit you. I want to show my power. I want to control you. So it's a thought. I want to be helpful. I want to be compassionate. I want to be kind. It's another thought. So every action comes from a thought. The seeds of a thought will bring to the fruit of action, of speech. Don't you have to be very careful with your thought? We're not careful with our thought. We'll let our thoughts wander. You believe that you let your thought wander? You don't think so, eh? How do you meditate? After the first 5 minutes, your thoughts already wander away. How can you concentrate? Our thought has been like a monkey. It's gone all over the place. Wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral. Why are we meditating? We are pulling that monkey back and train that monkey not to do bad things, not to do unwholesome things. That meditation is a process of training every thought. You have to be careful in every thought. You're not careful on the thought, you habitually think about killing someone, you finally wind up in killing him. And sometimes I don't know why. Some criminal said, a murderer said, I don't know. A murderer, when you read the newspaper, somebody appeared in the newspaper as a murderer, when you look at him, he's like an average Joe Blow. He's like an average person. You never thought of him as someone who murdered so many people. Because it's done out from thoughts. He could look like just an ordinary good guy, but he's a murderer. Because his thoughts breed that action out. Actions, if you do actions all the time, it becomes a habit. If you're always relaxing, if you're always sluggish, then you have the habit of being lazy. All the actions would bring into a habit. That's the reason why when you train your kids at home, you really have to encourage him to have the right action. Encourage him to do the cleaning. Encourage him to finish up all the food and not leaving unfinished food behind. You really have to train him. Train all the actions so that it becomes habitual for him. You don't care. That's the reason why some youngsters develop bad habits. Habits would result in personality. And personality becomes a destiny. Some people are more successful because of his personality. But we don't watch our personality. We don't watch our habits. We don't watch our actions. We don't watch our thoughts. That's the problem. That's why we're producing bad karmic energy, unwholesome karma. You see, when you're studying the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha taught us to look at the origins of things, the origin of thinking. Not superstition. So you sow what you reap. Very simple. You want to build up good personality, you watch your habits. You watch your actions, you watch your thought. How many people are interested in watching their own thought? How many people are actually interested in meditation? No, not many people. Very few people are interested in meditation. They're not interested in watching their own thought. They're only interested in greediness, hatred, and delusions. And then you say, yeah, I'm interested in meditation, but John, he's a multi-billionaire now, he's enjoying himself with Ferrari, with Porsche, with a big house and all that. You get into greediness again. You're yearning for what John is enjoying. You thought that's happiness, wealth, reputation, house, luxury cars. You think those are what you want. You get into the ego again, or not your thought. You're comparing. You got into the wrong habitual thought and you don't know about it. You know, John is not believing in the Buddhist teaching and is enjoying himself, is happy. How happy is he? Well, he has a beautiful girlfriend and he has all kinds of luxuries. You get into greediness again, in your habitual thought. You thought that's what you want. You are in a loop, topsy-turvy thinking loop. The Buddha's teaching want to correct us, want to pull us back from samsara,